President Biden has just released a statement responding to the news that draft Supreme Court opinion of Alito on the getting rid that suggests Roe, Casey abortion precedent would be struck down by a conservative majority if there are other people supporting it. So this is what President Biden had to say about it. We do not know whether this draft is genuine or whether it reflects the final decision of the court. With that critical caveat, I want to be clear on 3 points. First, my administration argued strongly before the court in defense of Roe v. Wade. We said that Roe is based on a long line of precedent, recognizing the 14th Amendment. I believe that a woman's right to choose is fundamental. Roe has been the law of the land for almost 50 years. And he says that if the court does overturn Roe, it will fall on our nation's elected officials at all levels of government to protect a woman's right to choose. You can read the full statement on the screen. So nothing really surprising there. If anything, it shows that there are a lot of voters who care about protecting Roe, Casey in some way, shape, or form. So I think Democrats probably see this as an opportunity to do political advocacy, to maybe even regain some of the considerable momentum they've lost. But of course, getting rid of abortion or limiting abortion or returning it to the states is something conservative activists have wanted for decades and decades and decades. So it energizes them too. Yeah, well, the tone of this, something that I think the left has been objecting to since this leak came to our attention yesterday evening, and which is a tone that is reflected in Biden's statement in the last paragraph, is that this seems like an argument for the Democratic establishment to wag their fingers at voters and say, vote harder. Their response to this is to vote harder. In the last paragraph of his statement, he says, it will fall on voters to elect pro-choice officials this November. At the federal level, we will need more pro-choice senators and pro-choice majority in the House to adopt legislation that codifies Roe, and I will work to pass and sign this law. Well, people on the left, liberals, progressives, have been arguing for the duration of Joe Biden's presidency, that he should get rid of the filibuster and enshrine Roe into law, that this was a long time coming. We've seen this Republican majority coming down the pike for quite some time. And Democrats, to your point, Robby, do persistently, repeatedly run on the fear-mongering of what will happen to the Supreme Court if Democrats don't get in office. And it feels as though they have not there has been a disconnect between the urgency with which they talk about how important the right to choose is and their willingness to do anything about it, perhaps because they know it is a cudgel to drive people to the polls. So while some folks obviously hopped on the internet and immediately started blaming, Susan Sarandon and Jill Stein voters for it, others have pointed out that Nancy Pelosi and establishment Democrats have been courting anti-choice people to the party, saying that it was okay to be an anti-choice Democrat, not choosing to use the supermajority that Obama had to enshrine Roe into law at that point, and that all of those decisions by the Democratic establishment have led to this point, making the claim that we just need to vote harder now fall on deaf ears. Opening the floodgates by doing the procedural tweaks is not a long-term solution, because that Republicans are going to retake every level of power and just undo them or do them harder in the other way. And well, right. Isn't that the whole point of democracy, that you do get swings back and forth, that you vote for people to enact a set of laws? Fine. Absolutely, and they do so. It's just not it's not like, well, we can do that and then it's fixed forever. Well, look, nothing's fixed forever. I do think that there is an extent to which there is inertia, and that people look. The reality is that the overwhelming majority of Americans support the right to choose to some extent. Now, obviously, those numbers change a little bit when you talk about what the demarcation line is, but the overwhelming majority actually want there to be some right to choose, which this opinion, by the way, if it is in fact reflective of what's going to come down the pike, there are no exceptions for the safety of the mother or some of these other rape, incest, those kinds of things, which even the most ardent conservatives, most of them support. Well, I mean, if those overwhelming majorities live in California and New York and some other places, they're still going to have abortion and whatever. But the states where a majority of voters do want abortion, I mean, that's where I struggle with this, because this is an area where it's a little scrambled in who's advocating for democracy and who's not. But, what's your take, Kim?
Well, to Biden saying, well, we just got to, and Bree, you saying, vote harder, get more Democrats in office. We've got to get all these pro-choice people in. That we've had unified governments. We're in technically a unified government right now under Democratic control. They still have not codified Roe v. Wade or Planned Parenthood versus Casey, whichever one they want to. They're not a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to have medical autonomy over her body. They have not codified this. There's been a unified government under Bill Clinton. There's been a unified government under Barack Obama. There's a unified government under Joe Biden. Where is the codification of this?
Right.
When is it? So what makes us think that suddenly if we get more Democrats in, we're going to definitely, I mean, I could kind of understand right now saying, well, it's because it's a little bit more split. You know, the Senate is 50-50. So we got to do more, but are they really going to actually do anything with it? If they were, the problem is that a lot of Democrats are pro-life, and this is something that on the left they're not willing to actually talk about. Same thing on the right. The right doesn't seem to want to talk about the fact that there's a lot of pro-choice people on the Republican side of the aisle. Well, it is not exactly a left-right split on this, so it's harder to codify.
Well, and Kim, I think you've made this point before. It's a great one that, you know what, the Democrats have totally sold out the idea that, you know, private medical decisions belong to people and their doctors. They have absolutely discredited the idea that that's a important virtue to them. We're now making medical decisions at the collective level, at the federal bureaucracy level. So maybe it doesn't matter, but from a principled standpoint, I wonder if that has any effect.
Well, other members of the left are pointing out that there has been support for, to your point, Kim, these anti-abortion Democrats in Congress. Henry Cuellar in Texas has been running against Jessica Cisneros. And of course, the establishment Democrat has secured all kinds of endorsements from the party, the same people who are now wringing their hands and saying, oh my God, you got to vote harder for Democrats to get into office. Well, if you've got Democrats like these, who needs enemies? Right. And why isn't there support for someone who is a firmly pro-choice candidate like Jessica Cisneros, and support of the Democratic Party behind the people who actually support what are supposed to be bedrock principles of the Democratic Party itself?
Yeah. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I do think that this will show us if this opinion ends up being the opinion that's put out there. I have a hard time believing that this is the actual draft of what's finally going to be out there. But hey, we've been shocked before, I suppose.
Right.
But if that's the case, then people will need to start paying way more attention to their local elections. That is where it will drive a lot of attention. It's not just about getting people at the federal level. People are going to have to pay attention to who they elect on a local level, because that person is going to decide when that line is of when a woman still has the right to choose. Will she be protected for rape and incest, or if her life is in danger? My real big fear about this, in order to even to overturn this again in the Supreme Court, for it to go up to that level, I worry somebody has to lose their life, and this has to then get challenged in court, where people say, my sister, my daughter lost her life because the doctors would not give her an abortion. And and there was complications, there was medical complications, and the doctors have been warning about this, and she couldn't access one. And, that people are going to have to get to that point in order to even bring this back up to the Supreme Court. That's also another, in order to get this overturned, you have to have somebody suing somebody. And
I think it's important I'm glad you brought it back to the reality of the world life implications of this, Kim. One fun, not so fun fact that I learned recently about why how the trimester system was decided in Roe originally was that they were going to do an earlier date. But because there's no universal health care in America, there was this concern that it would take women longer than that to access health care to actually secure an abortion. And for that reason, they extended the timeline. It was a feature of us having a broken healthcare system in the first instance that gave justices who didn't necessarily have an ideological commitment to giving women more time to secure an abortion, extended it, knowing that it's so difficult for women to find resources. And even if it does come down to localities and individual states, that's not going to be a solution for the majority of people who are affected, who are low-income folks, disproportionately Black and brown, who also disproportionately live in red states. And if you look at the maps of where we're going to lose the right to choose in this country, it's going to be a lot of older, more affluent, white leadership that is making these kinds of rules that are not going to affect them. They're going to be able to fly their mistresses to Connecticut and get all the abortions they want. And it's going to be these low-income populations that are really going to suffer.
Yeah, we should emphasize, this is an unusual occurrence. We really don't know what the outcome of the court case is going to be. And, between now and when it comes out, even if this is representative of the majority decision, probably Kavanaugh, could change his mind based on this, based on the reaction. He could change his mind just because he gets second thoughts. The John Roberts changed his mind about the healthcare decision from years and years ago. Right, some kind of at the last minute is what we understand, that the other Justice Scalia and other justices were surprised at the last minute that the decision was written as if he was on board with it. So even if it's exactly what it looks like, might not be the outcome. So we'll have to see. But it was interesting news. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.